Another
perfect
guest
opportunity to disavow George Soros.
Okay, we'll come back to this. I'm going to bring in another guest.
I was going to say,
hang on, guys.
it cuts both ways.
Hang on, time out.
I would love to see.
Guys.
I would love to see George Soros be subject to the same wealth tax as I would have for every billionaire.
We all, I think, broadly agree about this. So let's just have a little time out. I'm going to bring in another guest to join us. It's the host of the mother of all talk shows and former MP, George Galloway. George, always a pleasure to have you on Uncensored, particularly when you spent all afternoon spray gunning me on social media about how you're going to rip me to pieces. And as you often do, by the way, and as you often do, by the way, woefully mischaracterising me as some kind of Starmer fanboy when I spent almost all of his tenure as Prime Minister hammering the guy. The only thing I've really agreed... the only thing I've agreed with is about Ukraine.
And Boris Johnson. You're a fanboy for him and Boris Johnson.
No. Don't misquote me. Don't misquote me. I am specific
of war in the Ukraine.
You're specifically on Ukraine. I agree with both Johnson and Starmer. That is true.
And how?
But that does not make me a fanboy for either of them. I have many things I've hammered them over too. But on that point, you're wrong and they're right about Ukraine.
Well, you say that, but I'm on the same line as your friend Donald Trump and the American administration. And it's really come to something when, having spent a lifetime myself fighting against NATO and American wars, it's the Americans that are trying to stop the war, and Piers Morgan, Boris Johnson and Keir Starmer who are trying to keep it going.
I don't want to keep it going.
A lot of Ukrainian,
I don't want to keep it going.
You've got a lot of Ukrainian blood on your hands. You have lied about this war from the beginning.
Actually, Vladimir Putin has the blood on his hands of Ukrainians.
You can have a monologue if you like.
It was Vladimir Putin.
You can have a monologue if you like.
3 years ago.
Bring on a guest.
3 years
ago. Let the guest speak.
3 years ago. If you're going to libel me, I will hold you to account.
You have lied about the origin of this war, about the duration of this war, about the course of this war, and now having caused you and your war party the death of 1 million Ukrainians while claiming to love Ukrainians, you're now calling for British lives to be lost.
What a load of absolute bullshit.
That constitutes close to a war crime.
What
and you are talking.
Listen. Get off your Putin fanboy hat for a moment.
Well, you see, there you go.
I'm going to respond in kind.
Reagan said.
I'm going to respond.
Anybody who disagrees with you
is a Putin
fanboy.
Can I respond, please?
Why don't you listen to Donald Trump?
Can I respond?
He told you yesterday.
Can I respond?
Can
I respond or not?
Donald Trump told you yesterday that joining Ukraine, forget about it. That's the cause of the war in the first place, which I've been telling you from the beginning.
Yeah, okay, let me respond if I may. Can I respond?
Sure, Piers.
Okay, Donald Trump, who I know well, I've been a friend of his for 20 years, good and bad. We've had some up times and bad. Spoke to him a few weeks ago. We had a great conversation. But he's absolutely wrong when he categorises this as something that Ukraine started. Absolutely wrong to call Zelensky a dictator. The real dictator is Vladimir Putin. 3 years ago, he illegally invaded a sovereign democratic European country and started murdering with impunity Ukrainians. The Ukrainian people, to everyone's astonishment, managed to repel that early invasion by Russian forces and are still repelling them 3 years later. They've reached an impasse where there's been little movement on the battlefield now for many months, but hundreds of thousands on both sides are dying. It's back to World War I scale of losses, and it has to end. I want the war to end like Trump does. I don't like his categorization of Zelensky as a dictator. I don't like the way he's trying to make out that they started this war when it was Russia, but I do agree with him that we need to have peace, and I actually think he's inherited the situation, and I think his way to try and forge peace by doing a minerals deal with Ukraine, which should satisfy his critics back in, particularly the MAGA critics who don't like the way they've wasted, as they see it, all these billions on Ukraine. This way they can recoup that through the minerals. I think it's a smart business deal by Trump if that happens. I think there's a general acceptance You have to have the war now frozen on current geographic lines so that Russia would keep the territory it's taken but not have sovereignty over that. And Ukraine can try and politically get back the territory later because it would retain sovereignty. We'll see if that ever happens. But don't, please, with a straight face, try and tell me that Russia did not start this war 3 years ago. I know the history. I know what happened. And I know all the background to this, but the idea this is somehow bloody Zelensky's fault and Ukraine's fault is an absolute joke.
Blimey, that was a long response, Piers. I hope I'll get as long to respond to your response without you interrupting me. You're going to regret it when very soon Zelensky is sitting in a beachfront villa somewhere counting his ill-gotten gains and all the secrets of the rampant corruption between the Democrats and the Zelensky regime begin to tumble out of the cupboard. This war did not begin 3 years ago. You very well know that it began in 2014. You very well know that it began with a coup against the elected president of Ukraine, backed by Victoria Nuland and the administration at that time and supported by you. You very well know that the criminalization of the Russian language, which followed hard on the heels of that coup, was the proximate reason for an uprising in the east of the country amongst Russian-speaking, ethnically Russian people. You very well know that Zelensky and his predecessor rained down shot and shell on the people of East Ukraine for 8 years before Putin intervened in 2022, and that 14,000 people, most of them women and children, were killed in that onslaught. You very well know that Zelensky was preparing for a final onslaught, a final solution. And while I'm on that subject, you're always telling us how much you love the Jews. You're supporting a regime which puts up statues to Nazi collaborators, to generals of the Galician division of the SS. You are
Zelensky
supporting
is Jewish, you know that, right? You know Zelensky's Jewish, right? Do you?
But that's like saying there's no racism in America because Obama.
So a Jewish. So you're calling the Jewish leader of Ukraine a Nazi? Is that your position?
No, I'm not. But the regime is. You know very well that all over Ukraine, the statues and the heroization of Bandera and the SS in Galicia and the mass murderers of Jews, including at Babi Yar.
There are I'm going to respond to that. There are proportionally, as you know, to quote you, I'll start this by saying, as you know, there is a tiny percentage of people in Ukraine who are neo-Nazis, as there are, by the way, in many of the neighbouring countries there, including in Russia, right? And they are not.
Who's putting up these statues?
They are not
Who's
a significant.
They are not these people.
They are not.
They're calling libraries after
them. Let me finish.
Let me finish. Calling university wings after them.
Let me finish. They are
There's
not.
A Bandera
let me finish.
In Kiev.
Let me finish. They are not a significant number of people, and for you to call the Jewish leader of Ukraine somebody who is leading a regime propping up Nazis is despicable. Despicable.
I've already said to you, that's like saying there's no racism in America because Obama was briefly the president of the country. The entire western part of Ukraine played a decisive role in the mass murder of Jews and Poles and others in the Second World War. And now they are heroizing the heroes of the SS and the other collaborating forces.
A tiny number of people do that, as you well know. Tiny number of people.
When all these things become clear.
Let me ask you, why do you support? Why do you support? Okay. Let me ask you why.
When Zelensky is counting his money,
let me finish.
You're going to be sorry for all the heroization of him that you have done.
You know what, George? You might be also sorry for propping up a despicable Russian dictator who illegally invaded a sovereign democratic European country. You might look at yourself in the mirror in a few years when he carries on Putin invading other countries, which he will, because this was never about Russian speakers in Ukraine. This was all about trying to restore the Soviet Union. He's a despicable tyrant who will prove people like you to be useful idiots in this war.
Why doesn't Donald Trump agree with you?
Because he's wrong.
Well, you know, you have been up his ass all of these 2 decades.
Really?
You've kissed his feet.
Really?
You've licked his boots. You've fawned upon him.
Really?
You have been his super fan. And now, on this fundamental question of our age, he's entirely wrong.
Well, no, he's wrong to call Zelensky a dictator, make out he's the perpetrator of the war. Yes, he's right to forge peace.
Said that NATO,
he's right to forge peace. And by the way, I
hammered
hammered Trump so much over things like the COVID pandemic, January 6th, stolen election. He didn't talk to me for 6 months. So this idea I'm always sucking up to him is complete lies
everybody
again.
Watching
complete
knows,
lies.
Piers, everybody watching knows you are Trump's biggest ass.
I like him.
Everybody watching.
I like Donald Trump.
I know you like him.
I like him.
Like him.
And on many things, I like him. And on many things,
fundamental question.
Let me finish.
The biggest question in politics in the world today, he's got it completely wrong.
No, you didn't hear me. Why didn't you listen to what I said?
What do you mean I didn't hear you?
I've literally said to you, on his plan to get peace, I agree with him. I don't agree with him about calling Zelensky a dictator, and I don't agree that it was Ukraine that started the war. You do, because you're Putin's little expendable.
Ukraine was the most corrupt country in
more corrupt
Europe
than Russia?
More corrupt than Russia? It was designated by the economists,
what about Putin?
by the FT,
what about Putin?
by everyone who knows about these things.
Tell me about Putin.
Listen, Joe
What's Vladimir Putin, George?
The Biden family's corruption
what is Vladimir Putin?
Will turn out to be.
What is Vladimir Putin?
Stop parroting these things.
What is Vladimir
You're going to
Putin?
regret it. It is Zelensky.
Tell me about
and his
Putin.
predecessor
You can't do it, can
Joe
you?
Biden
You cannot
and
do
Barack
it.
Obama
You will not
and
criticize
John
Vladimir
Kerry's
Putin.
son or daughter, whoever they are nowadays.
You won't criticize
and
Vladimir
all
Putin, will you?
American oligarchs.
You won't criticize Vladimir Putin. Look at you. How pathetic.
In the corruption in Ukraine.
But no
and
corruption
you're
in
going to find
Russia.
out all about it soon.
No corruption in Russia.
I'll tell you what, your mate, Donald Trump, is going to open every book, every drawer, every filing cabinet, and you're going to be embarrassed.
Okay, final question, George. Can you think of anything negative to say about Vladimir Putin or not?
Well, I wouldn't have voted for him, as I told you.
You wouldn't have voted for him. Okay.
I would have voted.
All right.
I would have voted for the leader of the opposition.
I got it. So you can't think of anything negative to say about the single most ruthless dictator in the world. And that says it all, George. Anyway, always a pleasure having you on Uncensored. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Let me just quickly go to my panel for their reaction. I mean, as you can tell, George and I didn't wholeheartedly agree with each other, although mainly because he was trying to mischaracterize my position on this. I don't have a problem with what Trump's trying to do with the peace deal. I have a problem with how he's characterizing this. Sam, let me just ask you about that. I think I don't think Trump has a lot of choice or options other than the path he's pursuing here to get peace, and I applaud him for doing it. But I also think that the way they're trying to characterize this as all coming from Ukraine is utterly disingenuous.
Yeah, I mean, it's just simply a matter of fact that Russia invaded Ukraine. I mean, it's anybody who was sent it was aware of that. I mean, I hope there is peace there. I think the mineral rights deal is both is really, I think, more of a paper tiger than anything else. I don't think that there's really much value in those rare minerals, as they're called. But if it allows for Putin to realize that there's a commitment by the United States and it causes a peace to break out, then I'm all for that. I would appreciate if the United States was not in a position of extracting other countries' resources. We have an obligation to Ukraine because of the 1993 agreement that led to Ukraine giving up the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world, that we would protect them from an invasion by Russia. And so I think there's an obligation we have. But, I think if the Ukrainian people want peace, which my sense is that they are, after 3 years of war, are probably exhausted by this, then I hope this is the fastest route to getting it.
Yeah, I mean, Benny, you and I don't necessarily agree about this, but I think we could probably all agree about Trump trying to get peace is a good thing. I like to see an American president who pursues peace, not war. I also think he's being pragmatic about how he deals with the people in his own side, particularly the MAGA support that he has, who are very anti this, of continued support for Ukraine, that if there's a business arrangement to be done that involves the minerals, which looks like you're getting a quid pro quo, that it's an easier sell to probably his base, which I can get that. And in return, Ukraine's going to want America to be part of a security guarantee to make sure if they do this deal on the current geographic lines, Putin won't come and attack them again. I mean, how do you feel about the way I've characterized that?
Well, let me begin by speaking for my entire panel here by saying that was wonderful. Maybe there is free speech left in the UK, because what we just watched would be tantamount to two drunken uncles going to blows on Thanksgiving here in the States. Now, you don't have Thanksgiving in the UK, so maybe you don't understand the reference.
Christmas.
Piers,
we do it at Christmas.
Those were drunken uncles, okay? Box of wine, right? Too much whiskey on Thanksgiving and too much turkey.
And a lot of history between us, which has been simmering for years. Yeah.
And I respect it. That guy clearly hates you. I hate your guts. Okay, so let's establish what.
And the truth is that George and I will probably find each other and go for a pint, because we're like that in Britain. We have a big old punch up, then we go and have a beer to settle our problems.
I respect it. I think Sam and I agreed like once or twice even on this panel. So here you go. Cheers to you, Piers. So let's talk about things that we should hate. All right, that guy hates your guts. Here's things we should hate: people who cancel elections, right? People who lock up journalists, people who kill journalists, people who forcibly conscript their own population.
You're talking about Putin.
People who
is that Vladimir Putin you're talking about?
Who shut down churches, right?
Is that Vladimir Putin you're talking about?
Piers, see, this is the difference between me and the homie you just had on here. I think Putin's a scumbag dictator. I'm not here to argue for Putin, but I ain't here to argue for Zelensky either. One wrong doesn't make a right. One right doesn't make it. Just because it's like one guy's a scumbag doesn't mean you have a right to also behave exactly like a dictator, which is what Zelensky's done. Cancel What happened to the elections, Piers? Why did Zelensky cancel the election?
I'll tell you what happened. Benny, hang on. Time out, Benny, hang on. Time out.
Forcibly
You asked me a question.
And who shuts
You
down
asked me a
churches.
question. You asked me a question.
How can you do it?
Hang on.
It's
hang
a
on.
dictator.
You asked me a question. You asked
right?
me a question. Let me reply. Yeah. Why did he cancel the election? Well, it could be something to do with the fact that Ukraine is under martial law, which specifically under their constitution prevents him from having an election. Why are they under martial law? Because they're actually at war. Secondly, 6 million Ukrainians left the country as refugees. How are they going to vote in a free and fair election? You then have all the people who are serving in the military on the front line. How are they going to vote? You have 20% of the country under current illegal occupation by the Russians. How are they going to vote in a fair and free election? There's 3.5 million of them there in that 20% region. So when you add it all together, how on earth are you going to have a free and fair election in Ukraine right now? And why would you possibly use that? I'll give you an analogy. In 1935, there was a UK general election. Do you know when the next one was after that? 1945, right towards the end of the war, when we'd already had VE Day and there was just the Japan element to be dealt with. And the reason we didn't have one throughout World War II was because Winston Churchill knew it couldn't be a free and fair election, which would represent the wishes of the people, because most of them couldn't vote. And so there's a precedent for that. America,
Sure.
I think outside of the Civil War and one or two other occasions, America's never had a situation where there's been actual warfare on American soil to prohibit an American election taking place. So why would you expect Ukraine to have an election?
America had
New
elections.
York City
in World War
actually
II.
delayed
America had
its
elections.
mayoral election.
America had elections in
after
World War
9/11.
II, but wasn't having a war on its soil in World War II.
In New York City, we delayed our mayoral elections after 9/11.
Okay, but I'm talking about a national election.
I'm saying that these are all of that. America is the funder of this war, and dare I say, the reason the war started in the first place with the fake Maidan Revolution coup that was totally sponsored by America, Victoria Nuland and John McCain cheersing, having champagne toast as they oversaw it there. Somebody please explain that. Victoria Nuland on tape picking the new Ukrainian cabinet. So, yeah, let's just say that this country is pretty important when it comes to this war, and that Ukraine is effectively a vassal state of the American State Department. I don't like that. I don't want that to be the case. But given the fact that we're funding the war and we're probably the reason why it started in the first place, in part, you would assume that American democracy would be something that we'd be fighting for because, you know, there's Ukrainian flags all over American neighborhoods, at least in dark blue areas where the smooth brains live. And when these people put up a Ukrainian flag, they assume that they're getting American democracy. That's what they assume. I'm getting American democracy. And America doesn't just cancel elections because of emergencies. That doesn't happen in this nation.
Well, you just heard from Sam that the New York election.
We don't close down churches.
Hang on. You just
we
heard.
don't close down churches.
You just heard from Sam. Hang on, Benny. You just heard from Sam the New York mayoral election was delayed because of the pandemic. So there's an example. You do.
9/11.
After 9/11, I'm sorry. After 9/11.
The final thing I'll say on this, and it's a very important point, is that we've been lied to, right? You get lied to that war is about one side being all the devils and one side being the angels.
I agree with
that.
that.
And the truth about war, Piers, is that most of the time, both sides are devils.
I agree. Well, I don't think both sides. Well, no. I don't think
the best you can ask for is an ugly peace instead of a hot, bloody war. And yes, I agree with you, my brother from another mother across the pond. I agree with you, Piers, that the killing should end and the dying should end.
Okay. Gillian?
I'd say Zelensky is a dictator.
He's not. Putin's a dictator. But Gillian, final word to you.
Maybe they're both dictators.
Okay. If I could put on my tin hat and wrap myself in tinfoil, being as sober and judicial as possible, I follow the money here. So, yes, I agree with you. Putin is a really bad guy. But it obviously takes two or more than two. And if you follow the money, when you hear out of Zelensky's own mouth, it's like, oh, I didn't take money. I got the money in the form of weapons. Well, who got rich off the weapons? Defense contractors. Okay, then what assets did Ukraine have? Well, they had the breadbasket, which was farming land second only to Iowa across the globe. It was one of their top resources. And then in 2021, there was land market reform from financial pressures due to global financial institutions forcing them to open up that land to, guess who? Cargill, ADM, so on and so forth. So they were able to capture that resource. And then what did they have left? They had minerals left. So now Putin gets to keep, I think he has 2 territories where he'll probably hold on to those minerals. And now we're going at Sam saying there's no value. It certainly doesn't seem like the case. I haven't heard that, but I'm not an expert in this. And now we're grabbing some of those minerals. And then guess who gets to rebuild all of it? BlackRock and JP Morgan Chase. So I do not think it's like it's Zelensky, it's Putin. I think it's far bigger than that. And please feel free to blow holes in my conspiracy theory, but that's just how it looks to me.
You know what I've learned over the years, Gillian, is that a lot of conspiracy theories end up turning out to be true. So I'm gonna leave it there. Listen, great debate, you guys. We had the full essence of a proper free democratic society debate today, which is a good thing. So thank you all very much.
Including your drunken uncle.
Thank you.
Including my drunken uncle. And we didn't get round, sadly, to talking about Gene Hackman, who died in very sad circumstances today with his wife and his dog. And there's some pretty disturbing new reports coming out about what may have happened. We're not entirely sure. But Gene Hackman, I mean, just to say at the end of this show, one of the all-time great actors. The thing I always thought about Gene Hackman, I can't remember ever seeing him in a bad movie. Right? Every movie he was in, he just came alive, did a brilliant job, and he made, out of the 80-odd movies he made, I can't think of a single turkey. How many movies, how many actors can say that about their careers? So one of the all-time great actors, and a very sad day that he died, and appears to be in such sad circumstances. Anyway, that's my view on Gene Hackman. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Later, Piers.
Thank you.
Alina Hammer's ferocious courtroom defense of President Trump in the E. Jean Carroll defamation case made her a MAGA superstar. She's since become one of the president's most dependable public advocates and trusted advisors. Hammer is now the presidential counselor, a role previously occupied by the formidable Kellyanne Conway. And she joins me now on Uncensored from Washington, D.C. Well, Alina, great to see you.
Good to see you, Piers. Thanks for having me.
I can't think of a more electrifying start to a presidency in my lifetime. It's been endless, relentless, thrilling in some ways, slightly scary in others. The whole world is agog with what is happening in your White House at the moment. How do you categorize it?
I think exactly how you did. The energy here is insane. I just met with social media influencers that have been invited here. I've been meeting with every cabinet member. We are always open door. The Oval is bumping everybody every day, just coming in, talking to him. And he has been nonstop. I think that's pretty evident from all the executive orders that have come out, but we work in between that as well. And it's been absolutely invigorating and just energizing. And if you look at what the American people are saying, they're loving it.
Tell me 5 things you've done this week.
Oh, I would love to. Where shall I start? Well, first of all, I do endless TV shows. I meet with the president daily. I have met with cabinet members, some team, if not 3, 4 a day. We have coordinated meetings. I'm focusing my portfolio now and really honed in on what I want to be doing outside of my work for the president, but for the American people in my time here. So I've started doing that, but I can't discuss some of it. Is top secret, but my list is so long. I said, I don't even think that I could do 5. It would have to be 5 pages, but that's the way it should be. If you go to work, if you get paid by the American people or anybody, frankly, you should work and do your job.
Yeah, I mean, I've got no problem with Elon Musk sending that. I know he'd done that before at some of his other companies. It seems to me a very smart way of making people focus on what they actually do. Because if the answer is either you don't reply, or you're dead, which is why you're not replying, or you can't come up with things you've actually done, then you're probably not in the right job.
Or you shouldn't have a job,
right?
And that's the truth of it, right? So the reason this started is because we were realizing there were people that were not coming to work. That's how it started, right? You don't show up to work. That has been a kind of generational issue, I think. And big companies have now started cracking down and following our lead on this. I think post-COVID, we just don't have the time anymore to see laziness. And the productivity is up when you're cooperating and coordinating with your peers. So then you layer that with the fact that you're working for the government. These are taxpayer dollars. And then we have people that we think are holding 2 jobs, okay? That progressed to, are you even here? Do you even have a job? Is this real? Where is this money going? As we looked into government waste, we realized that a lot of these NGOs, et cetera, have been just masking money and funneling it to the wrong places or wrong pockets. And we want to make sure that's not happening.
I mean, was it a confusing message, though, to the electorate when immediately, I think at least 3 departments announced that their employees didn't need to respond? I mean, I read that and thought, well, hang on, is there a concerted united front here or not?
Yes, there is absolutely a concerted united front. I think the issue was, and Elon addressed this yesterday in the cabinet meeting, we have departments that have top secret, myself included. We're working on top secret things that are not open to the public, things that you would not report to an SGE employee, or you would not report to somebody other than the person you directly report to. I directly report to President Trump. I'm part of the executive branch, and President Trump knows every single day what I do. So I think that the directive was not so much as a slight to Elon, which of course, mainstream media would like to make it look like there's a divide, but more of, we're going to internalize this and do it the way that this department works, or the way that it works for us. But if you look at what people are doing in each department, we're all cutting government waste. We're all making sure employees are held accountable, and we are firing. Unfortunately, the reality is we have to fire people that are not America First agenda and are not working hard.
What is the best and worst thing about working for President Trump?
The best thing for working about President Trump is that you are working for President Trump. I mean, he is something else. History will be so kind to this man. I think that this has been one of the most epic months in American history. I really think imagine what we're going to do in 4 years. I mean, what an honor to work for him. He has been a mentor for me personally. He has really taught me so much. And one of the worst things about working for President Trump is that you have to try and keep up with him, because he does not stop. So sleep deprivation happens and all of those things when you're working as hard as he is. But it's an honor. I don't complain about it for 1 minute. I mean, it's a blessing. Really, it is.
I always know if I want to talk to him, I just call him at like 7 in the morning and he'll answer.
100%.
I mean, there aren't many world
2 in the
leaders who
morning,
can do
it's
that
fine.
too. Yeah. I mean, he's got an extraordinary work ethic. And an extraordinary drive. I mean, he doesn't need to be, as he often says, and it's a really good point, he doesn't need to do this, right? I mean, he could just bask in the fun of being a billionaire.
I think that's actually a lot of people here. If you look at it, some of these cabinet members, the people that are around him, Elon Musk, many of them are billionaires, independently wealthy, have been successful businessmen in their own right, and they have given that up for the American people. I was in private practice, had my own firm, gave it up to come here and serve the country and serve the president. And those are kind of, in my opinion, exactly what we needed, because it's a fresh outlook on how to handle policy, how to handle our economics and our problems, because a lot of us are business owners. We've run companies. We hold people accountable. We fire people. We know how to budget. We know how to look at numbers and make sense of them. And I think that's a blessing, but it's also a really common theme in this administration. A lot of these people gave up and sacrificed a lot to be here.
There are a couple of UK-related stories that are happening right now. One is the visit of our Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. I'll come to that in a moment. But the other story that broke this morning is that the Tate brothers, Andrew Tate and Tristan Tate, have left Romania for Florida after travel restrictions were lifted. And it is believed that this has come as a direct result of pressure or just guidance or a request for help from the Trump administration for the Romanians to allow this to happen. What can you say about that?
I am not involved in that. I can say that I read it just like you did. I saw that they lifted the restrictions on travel. These are not individuals that can exactly hide. So I understand that there's also some restrictions on them, even though they have lifted the ban on their travel. They still need to check in. They still need to report, as anybody does under an investigation. But what I can say is, look, this is an investigation. I'm not a party to the investigation. I don't condone, if it comes out to be true, anything other than being held accountable. But I also know that there is targeting that exists in these worlds. And I've been right there with President Trump while he was the victim of that. But I'll let those courts sort that out themselves. I think that you have to remember something, and I know that they're a hot topic that creates a lot of quick reaction. But as an attorney, I support transparency. I support accountability in a Justice Department that's doing the job the right way. I do not support targeting and political attacks. I don't support that. I never will. I'm an American, and I think that's a lot of what we have to correct right now in our own justice system.
I want to play two clips. One is of you on Benny Johnson's show talking about Andrew Tate, and then Ben Shapiro's reaction to it.
Hey.
Hello, Alina.
Hi.
Hello.
Nice to meet you. I'm a big fan.
Well, nice
Big
to meet
fan.
you. I'm a fan. You're the one saving Trump. You're doing more important work than me.
America, not just Trump. And I agree with everything you just said. And I think that you're anger is the same that President Trump has for our country, and the time is now for us to stop being wimps. I think
saying there is not actually true about Andrew Tate. He is not of the same ilk as President Trump. Find me the person and I'll find you the crime. That is true of President Trump. That is not particularly true of Andrew Tate. I think that the way that some people are defending Andrew Tate today is a conflation of a couple of different ideas. So I think there is a big difference between having people on, have whoever you want on. That's totally fine. Free speech and all the rest. That's totally fine. And cheering on bad people who don't actually care about your principles. And Andrew Tate is the latter.
What's your response to what Ben Shapiro said there?
You know, I'm so glad you asked me about this, all the Twitter trolls and the keyboard warriors. Here's the situation, Piers. You can say that somebody has issues, people have issues. I don't know. I'm not the lawyer and I wasn't speaking to that. What I appreciate is people that fight a fight. I appreciate all walks of life. I do not condone trafficking, rape, or some of the comments that Andrew Tate has made. But at the same time, you can say that you are listen, he is a social media presence. There are a lot of people that watch them. There are a lot of comments that aren't controversial. So to go to Ben Shapiro's comment, I don't think it's conflating. I think you can parse things out. If you look at the claims, some of them that they've made against President Trump, which were completely nonsense. And I don't know about the Tate brothers' cases. That's not my concern. That does not mean they're true. That also does not mean they're not true. You don't know. But in my case, I have sat through this where I know enough to know you do not post judgment on somebody until they have had a fair trial. You do not do that. And more importantly, if anybody wants to deny the fact that they have a very strong social media presence, then feel free to attack me. But I don't really care, frankly, because there is something called free speech. And I can tell you single-handedly that as much hate and anger as people had, I think they're conflating issues. I don't condone some of the things that he has been told, that he's currently under investigation for. I don't condone them, but I also recognize fully that we have broken systems in many countries. And I also condone the fact that you are allowed to speak for yourself. You're allowed to speak freely. And that's what I stand for. And I stand with that with President Trump. So when I say that, I say this. President Trump never backed down. He never let anything change the way he spoke in front of the media. He was authentic through and through. And maybe their authentic doesn't suit you and you don't like things. And there are things they say that I don't like 100%. But to put blanket things and try and attack somebody who appreciates a good fight, that's just silliness and it's misplaced anger, frankly.
I think what people have done, they've seen that interview with you went out in January this year, and here we are in February, the month after, and the Tates have suddenly been allowed to fly to America, and they're putting two and two together and potentially getting four, where they think that the White House has been generally sympathetic to the Tate's plight and has enabled them to fly to America. And the response from a lot of British politicians, led by a Conservative who ran actually to be leader of the Conservative Party and narrowly came second, Robert Jenrick, who normally is a big supporter of all things Trump and your White House, said this was predicted. He's the Shadow Secretary of State for Justice. This was predicted, should never have been allowed to happen. The US now needs to step up. We have an extradition treaty with them. They need to cooperate fully. The Tate brothers stand accused of rape and human trafficking in the UK and must face our justice system, which goes to the point that it's not just Romania where they've been facing these charges, but also in the UK. I mean, what would your response be to Robert Jenrick?
The Romanian courts lifted their ban. I have no part in that. I have had no communication on it. This is not at some directive, so fake news there. But I'll let President Trump speak to that. He's going to meet with the Prime Minister. Again, it's they take clips and they put in, they say, oh, they must have done it because look at this interview where she said she appreciates your fight. It reminds her of her client. I don't care if that pisses you off, frankly. I really don't. If you think, then under their theory, Pierce, let's go through this. Under their theory, I should have not represented President Trump. I should have not stood outside the courtroom when he was accused of some horrific things. And I should not have fought the fight, which frankly, we are winning. We have under appeal because there's a process. So under their theory, they say they love Trump, but they don't like this. Well, guess what? I'm an attorney. I believe in a fight. I believe in the truth coming out, and I believe in the court system. The court system will handle it. In their case, their country lifted a ban to allow them to travel. They still have restrictions. That's not my problem. That has nothing to do with me. Now, if the UK wants us to move them back to the UK and get them out of Florida, that's something they're going to have to discuss with President Trump. But I have no part in it. And frankly, I don't think that we have a piece of this puzzle.
Okay, that's clear. Talking of another puzzle, the Jeffrey Epstein files, we're told, are to be imminently unleashed. And already we saw the Attorney General Pam Bondi say that the scale of what happened is far worse than anyone realized. Well over 200, maybe 250 victims, and that we're going to get information either later today or tomorrow from these files. What can you tell me about that?
I believe it will be today. I was just with, I saw Pam and Cash in the White House just before coming on your show. And I can tell you that I haven't been privy to it yet, but I know it is coming out. They will be taking portions of it. We have to be patient. And I said this last night at a dinner with some media. And I said, I think America needs to remember one thing. We are going to be promises made, promises kept. But when you're dealing with victims, and by the way, this is a perfect example of a case that was vetted, that went through trial, that had testimony, and was prosecuted the right way. I don't preemptively attack. That's just not the way I operate. But in this case, in Epstein's case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
Is it going to be shocking?
I don't see how it's not shocking that there were so many individuals that were hidden and kept secret and not been held accountable. Let's talk about the reverse. I believe in accountability. So you have to now go through your process. Now, I won't say they're guilty until they go through their time in court. But again, now it's time for accountability. We have seen for so many years, Pierce, in this country, many investigations, subpoenas, testimonies in Congress, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a general frustration with accountability. We take it halfway, we don't take it home. And I really believe that now with Cash and Pam, there will be accountability.
And we know that only one person so far has actually gone to prison over that whole scandal. It was Ghislaine Maxwell, the former lover of Jeffrey Epstein. No man so far has actually been put in prison as a result of what happened. Do you think by releasing information from these files, we are likely to see criminal actions being taken?
Absolutely.
Really?
I think it would be negligent for us not to. You have to hold individuals who are indeed rapists accountable. We have to have them tried, in my opinion. And I do believe in that. You know, nobody should be just dismissed. You have to have your time in court and your case will be heard. But to hide lists, to protect political friends, all of that, we don't have time for that.
There will be some people who say, okay, I totally agree with you. So why have the Tates been allowed to fly to the United States and avoid justice in Romania?
Okay, so again, we're not the Justice Department in charge of the Tates.
Okay. Sir Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, will be with Donald Trump today. He's announced this week dramatic increase in our defence spending as a direct result, I would say, of the pressure brought to bear by Donald Trump against all European countries to step up and pay more for defence. People are seeing this as a dramatic realignment of American relations, bringing Russia in from the cold, you know, whacking the Europeans, etc. How would you categorize it?
I think the president is a negotiator. He's going to talk to every single country. And this is really a blanket rule. He addressed this yesterday about China, if you listen to the cabinet meeting. President Trump is about a couple things: economy, peace through strength, and America first. And we have had a complete and utter disaster under the last administration where we have encouraged, funded, ad nauseum funding to countries like Ukraine, while our country is suffering. This is not a sympathizer issue. This is not a one country over another. This is a blanket policy of President Trump. he is going to exhibit and has exhibited peace through strength. These wars wouldn't have happened, and he is negotiating actively with all countries, and he will continue to do so.
Do you think that Russia started the war?
I'm not gonna. I don't know the facts enough to speak to that, and frankly, the facts I do know are not something I would discuss on TV.
I mean, Alina, you are a brilliant lawyer. You obviously, I would imagine, have put your cursory brilliant eye over this war and who started it.
I think President Biden's negligence may have been part of the problem on why this started.
You don't think Russia invaded a sovereign democratic European country and started brutally murdering people?
I think that there were a lot of murders on both sides. And like I said, I wouldn't speak to details that I don't know of. I do not have intel. I have not been briefed on the Ukraine and Russia war. I see what you see, which is on TV, and I can see that both countries are at fault.
Do you think Zelensky is a dictator?
I think if you look historically at the fact that he hasn't been elected and he's held on to power, I don't think that's exactly a democratic party right there. That's not the way we operate in this
you're a
country.
lawyer again. Look, and I say this respectfully, but you're a lawyer. As you know, he was democratically elected in 2019. When it came up for the time there should be another election, they were under martial law in Ukraine, which specifically prohibits him holding another election. Also, 6 million Ukrainians have left the country as refugees. You have 20% of the country under Russian control. So the idea you could have a free democratic election in Ukraine right now for all those reasons is obviously unthinkable, right?
Well, Pierce, let me ask you the question. Who do you think started the war?
Oh, Vladimir Putin started the war and he is a dictator.
Good. I am sitting in the White House. I speak for the president. And unlike you, I'm not a TV person that can just throw around things without being properly briefed on what actually happened. So as I sit here now in the executive office of the president, I'm going to decline any comment other than this war would never have happened if President Trump was sitting in that Oval Office. It
That
never
might
should
well
have
be
happened.
that might well be
we
true.
will fix it.
That might well be true. I just
Yes.
don't think it's overly controversial to suggest that Vladimir Putin is a dictator or that he started the war. And I think that that's just something we should all just agree as we move forward.
Well, I'm not sitting here singing his praises, but I also know that we are in the middle of negotiating and we are trying to end a war, which is more important, frankly, than doing things like a TV hit where you just start accusing people and getting everybody into corners. That's not what I'm going to do. I am here to help President Trump finish this, wrap it up. And by me going on a show, frankly, the juice is not worth the squeeze for me to start hitting people hard when we are trying to bring everybody to the table. So all due respect to your position, I sit in the executive office of the president. President Trump will handle that the way he wants to, and I will not be inflating any wars here.
Final question. You're a mother of 3 kids. Cannot be easy for you to hold down one of the most pressurized, busy jobs, I imagine, in America and be a mum. How do you juggle it all?
I have the best family in the world. I have the greatest husband in the world. My children are a blessing. And amazingly enough, I go home and I see my children every weekend and I ask them a very simple question. Do you want mommy to come home? Because I will. And if they need me to come home, I am there for them. And if they want me to quit, I will, because they are number one. But I will tell you this. Every time I ask that question, my children say the same thing. Mommy, you have to save America.
What a brilliant answer. Alina Habert, lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Nice to talk to you. Thank you.
Piers Morgan Uncensored is proudly independent. The only boss around here is me. If you enjoy our show, we ask for only one simple thing. Hit subscribe on YouTube and follow Piers Morgan Uncensored on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And in return, we will continue our mission to inform, irritate, and entertain. And we'll do it all for free. Independent, uncensored media has never been more critical, and we couldn't do it without you.